Welcome to Vibration Cinema, the alter destiny of film. Today, we're giving you something you can feel by continuing our conversation about the common sense notions of properly exposing Black people by looking at Sparkle's use of hard and directional light. The argument that I'm making here needs some kind of historical context. Interrelated developments in digital technology and performance techniques gave rise to what is called area lighting, where a scene is lit globally, giving camera and actor free rein to roam about the scene without falling into any weird shadows, as opposed to the more rigid hit your mark method of the 40s and 50s. A lot of image makers have taken to warning against hard light on Black people without considering this evolution in style stemming from technological developments. This argument for soft lighting Black people, I think, has more to do with how digital cameras generally retain info in the highlights and looser restrictions on the actor's movements than it does any history of racism, even though the common sense notions today is that hard lighting Black people is a racial problem. My hope is that by looking at Sparkle, contemporary image makers reconsider the use of hard and directional lighting as artistic inspirations, particularly when photographing Black people. Sparkle is a film about stardom, singers, and the stage. It's also a film with seedy criminals. The narrative context of the film basically demands the use of spotlights, streetlights, and those creepy hanging pendants that are found in the criminal underground, so hard, directional, and even sourcey lighting should be expected. What's interesting about Sparkle is that it leans into this kind of lighting. Compare this lighting to the contemporaneous Lady Who Sings the Blues about Billie Holiday. Sparkle revels in not only the hard lighting, but the harsh shadows that such setups create. In Lady, they soften the stage lighting and balance the scenes with fill lights. My guess is that the lighting in Lady isn't as extreme given superstar Diana Ross is the main character and the film needed more mainstream appeal. The $14 million budget of Lady is harder to recoup than the $1 million budget of Sparkle. Sparkle is also a hard story about how fame and a man can wreck your life. Occasionally it nears melodramatic heights, and I think that the hard lighting accompanies these raw emotions brilliantly. Take this scene where the sisters plead with sister about her drug use. Everything is laid bare and the lighting is literally shining a light on the problem and overscores Lynette's acting in this moment of vulnerability. What I'm getting at is that context matters in decisions of aesthetics. So far we've talked about technology, acting style, story, budget, stars, genres, locations, mainstream appeal, etc. Sparkle is able to use these harsh highlights because it weaves throughout all of the other aspects of the film, and it does so in a way that is characteristic to the movie itself. The film's visual style is certainly in conversation with concert documentaries and performance photos and other sources, so it isn't necessarily unique, but it is singular. And I want to look at the 2012 Sparkle to clarify what I mean by that. This Sparkle is lit like any old made-for-TV movie. It's generic, so obviously it isn't unique. But because 2012 Sparkle grafts this aesthetic onto its narrative as opposed to making variations and permutations of the style to fit its contours, the lighting is unremarkable and formulaic. 76 Sparkle is also working on a set formula, crafted by recording and photographing live performances, 40s photography, etc. The difference here is that 76 Sparkle threads this formula together with its crime and melodramatic influences, and it's not afraid to take it a step further by harshening the light, which darkens the shadows. And that's another interesting byproduct of the hard light, harsh shadows. For a film about pop star icons, this is a very dark film. This is counterintuitive to what we typically think and expect from such a film. Even in their darkest narrative moments, superstar movies shy away from this level of darkness, let alone sit and revel in deep shadow. Whatever the intentions vis-a-vis production limitations, the filmmakers are consistent and remarkable in their craftsmanship here with regard to lighting. All of these considerations form like Voltron and become what I call gushy juice, stuff that is undeniably good, yeah, but more importantly, clear and distinct expressions that excite, inspire, and refresh. And Sparkle is wet, and I want to look at some of the gushiest of scenes now. What's great about this scene, beyond just the photogeny of Mrs. Waters and Effie, is that the lighting here is keying into the Williams' family class background. Often we think of set design and costuming as trappings of class in film, but so too is lighting. And also time, 40s working class Harlem. The fall-off here is giving late 30s to early 50s Harlem photography. A lot of the time these photographers had to use available lighting from windows and lamps because they didn't have the equipment or the space to fill in the light. Obviously, Bruce Surtees, Sparkle's DP, was able to light with more, but he was still able to harness the core of these photographs really nicely. The lighting in this scene where Effie is forced to sit with Satin Struthers to watch the sisters perform is kind of intense. It's what I'm talking about earlier when the crime lighting is blended in with the performance lighting. When the performance starts in shadow, it allows us that fear that maybe no amount of makeup could possibly cover the bruises from Satin's abuse. The lighting plays up this dramatic irony. Will the audience notice? Will Effie? How does this play out with Effie sitting next to Satin? The layering of light too here is really interesting, using the silhouettes in the foreground to break up the hard light hitting the stage. It's really good. And of course, letting the stage light blow out the lens, and when the sisters move into the shadow when Sister has her solo performance. It's really beautiful. This is a very operatic scene, old school good versus bad, light versus dark. The lighting here is the composition, creating the foreground, midground, and background elements, and the darkness of the rest of the bar focuses the attention on these three planes. This is Styx's scene, but because it's also a oneer and the lighting highlights what you need to look at, you see how the rest of the cast is supporting him in this scene. It's simple, but engaging. This is one of the brightest scenes in the film, and even though the lighting is filled out, those hard highlights are still here, which I think is clever because it permutes a motif throughout the film, this use of harsh lighting and a hard shadow, but places it in a new context. This scene also exemplifies how the lighting parallels the raw emotions of the scene. Everything again here is laid bare as Sparkle voices her hurt at Sister's death and Styx's absence. Styx sweating in the Harlem heat, catching these highlights, really puts him in the scene and back into Sparkle's life. The lighting overemphasizes his presence to some degree, which narratively underscores his absence. This is a gag. When I first saw this shot, it's a wrap on cinema. It's so good. They need to bring back this kind of shit. What I really like about the stage lighting here, and generally, is how the darkness creates this void and the spotlights carve out islands of visibility. Different color temperatures, different intensities of light, but in the same frame, and the darkness puts these differences into relief. Not as abstract as, say, something like photo montage, but I just really love this kind of stuff. And earlier in this performance, where the background singers are bathed in red. It's a very stark contrast to the red in Belly, where the skin is oiled up, and we can kind of see that evolution from how Black people were lit in the 70s to the late 90s. But the black dresses here are really selling this lighting. Like, yeah, if they were like a sequin gown, it would catch the light and glitter and shimmer and all of that, but I think there's a simplicity to the blackness that is just so striking. It's so commanding, and it reminds me of those Blue Note record sleeves. There's a lot more to talk about with Sparkle. It is such a great movie, and I'd love to, but we're here focusing just on the lighting. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Maybe later on we can circle back to it and do like an online community watch of it. I think that'd be really cool. But up next, we're going to be looking at how music videos created a collective Black cinematic artistic expression. And that video will be supplemented with a special video you'll just have to find out about when it drops, and a music video roundup. So be sure to tune in and subscribe, and if you be sure to jump on that like button. I hope you also look into your heart to comment, share, etc. Love you all madly. See you on the next one.